YouTube. It's coming up slowly. You better, you better rush. All right, here we go. So thank you very much for being here. Okay, so I'm gonna thank you very much for being here, and we appreciate you. And for this moment, I'm gonna go ahead and pray, and we have this conversation of saying no to depression and just being here for us as a family. Father, we thank you. You're such a great God. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I thank you for the speakers for tonight, for just taking their time to be here and to speak to us as people who are in this country, families and friends in diaspora and even America, in the world. We lift up your name because you are so gracious and amazing. Thank you, Father. We welcome you. And thank you for MHstars. Thank you for our families. Thank you for our friends. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I'll take this opportunity and invite Reverend Wamboye for a disclaimer. Thank you very much, Rev. You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody on the platform. Here is our disclaimer. Suggestions made here tonight are never a substitute for treatment or follow-up activities that are required by your doctor, your therapist, your psychotherapist, otherwise, or AKA, known by all as counselors. Would you believe some people even call the psychiatrist a counselor? They call the psychiatrist a psychologist, but that's okay, as long as we are confident. Now, we also want to know and let you know that nationwide, Suicide Lifeline, you can call 988 lifeline.org. And you can chat or you can text thanks to technology. And for domestic violence hotline, you can call 1-800-799-7233 24/7. Your call is free and confidential. You reach a licensed and trained counselor to direct you from there. Please know that even as we are discussing this evening, we always say, Kaidre, we are here for you. The discussants on this platform, especially the guests, they have volunteered their time because they are passionate about making sure that our community of faith and our community at large, all over the 50 states and its territories, that they receive mental health care, because I'm going to put myself online and say resources and help is available 24/7. I can only guarantee this in the United States for now. I don't know about other countries. That's why I stand for the United States. And as I conclude, we say that the New Hampshire GOP primary has concluded. I'm not taking any side. I'm just reporting. Welcome, Mr. Anthony Kamnau. We also say that we are thankful to you because this was his idea in October 2018, because we had so many, especially young adults, male and female, committing suicide from the ages, I remember, of 17 years all the way to 46 years old. And it's mixed. They were not failures. They were very successful. Even some doctors and counselors. I have not had a counselor, but people that are successful, that had substance. So you cannot say because they were homeless or they were this, because mental health does not choose like that. It can be anybody here. You look at this forum. It is like 1 out of 3. It used to be 1 out of 4. I don't know what happened after COVID. Welcome, Mr. Anthony, and we thank you for. We have been together for a long time because we have been in Taranta. You believe we can run and dance with the youth? Youth yes. From 13 to 25. Mm-hmm. Welcome.
It's amazing. We've come a long way. Oh my goodness, so many years. And the friendship and the conversation, like we trust each other in what we do. And also, I want to take this opportunity to welcome Veronica. Me and Veronica go a long, long way under Double Impact and also even participating in Talanta Awards. Remember, so many times, even in Texas. So I just want to go ahead and say, Karibu, you can share once you're done. We'll go to uh, Dr. Nancy. But otherwise, man, we go a long way. When she was still single, now she's married. Congratulations to her. Joel is a husband based in Colorado. Joel, good job, Joel. That's a Kenyan. We have a name. Is it Kamau? Your name, a Kenyan name?
Right. Joel Kamau.
Joel Kamau.
Yeah.
So, man, the beauty part of it is we record this and we share as many times as we can to continue to have this conversation. So it's recorded. Welcome. I don't know how to introduce you. I can talk for many hours. So welcome, Veronica. Go ahead and share tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I just want to say, Tony, thank you so much. And everyone else, Dr. Reverend Wamboy, I just really appreciate this platform. I am so excited to be connected to a community of people that are taking action, that are passionate about destigmatizing mental health in our community, sharing resources. I think, again, like I said, this is such an important space, and I'm so thankful for this platform and this time. Tony, thank you. I love the stories you're sharing of us just going way, way back, right? Like back in the day. And I'm so thankful for the connection that we've had, for just the opportunities that have come up. One thing that I think about when I think of you is you're a man of action. When you see something like missing in the community, you step in and do something about it. And that's something I've always really appreciated about you. So this is no surprise to me that you suggested this idea, and 5 years later, you all are still meeting. It's such a gift. So thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a PowerPoint that I'll be working through today, and then we'll kind of talk as we go. Okay, so give me 1 second to just find that and share it. Can you all see my screen right now? Okay, I'm going to maximize that view so I can click through the slides here. Okay, can you all see what I'm looking at right now? Destigmatizing mental health. Okay, wonderful. Yay for no tech issues today, right? But yeah, so today I'll be talking for a couple of minutes about destigmatizing mental health in the USA African diaspora. This is something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm excited to dive in. But before we do, I wanted to just introduce myself a little bit with a couple of pictures. So the first thing that I want you all to know about me is that I am a follower of Jesus. That is central to my life, my heart. It is just such an important thing for me. And I'm so thankful for this walk that I get to walk with the Lord, right? The other thing at the bottom there, you could see my lovely husband, Joel. He's here on the Zoom meet with us today. And we live in Colorado. We're actually expecting our first baby here soon, so we're very excited about that. And then a little bit just about my journey to where I'm at today as a couples and family therapist, practicing couples and family therapist. So my family, you see two pictures of my family on each side of the screen. My family's so important to me, and they've been such a big source of support and encouragement and empowerment to me on my journey this far. So on the right hand, I don't know if that's your right or your left, but the first picture you see with all of us in it is my graduation at St. Louis University in Missouri. I started off my educational journey really feeling like I wanted to go into the medical field. And I soon after realized that actually what I was passionate about was psychology, mental health, really looking at people and spending that time learning about what makes us who we are, working with couples, families, and individuals, right? So graduated with a bachelor's of arts and psychology at St. Louis University. On the other side, You see me, my dad, my mom, and my little sister. This was after we moved to Colorado, my husband and I decided to pursue a master's in couples and family therapy. Again, this was just the next step in terms of pursuing my passions in working with couples, families, individuals, really looking at the mental health things that we all deal with and creating safe spaces for people to come to. And so that's where we're at now. A few other things about me, just some fun things. You see a picture of me sitting out in nature. Nature is a big part of my interest. I love being out in nature. It's so grounding. It's so soothing. It helps me feel balanced. Another piece is I really love being creative. I love reading. I love writing. Those are just things that really add to my life and help me feel balanced. And I think balance is important for all of us. So I'm going to go over to the next slide. Let's see here. It will let me. Okay. So we're going to go on a journey together today. You might see me look down a little bit here and there. I have my iPad and some notes. But before I talk about the journey that we're going to be on, I'm a really interactive person. So as we're chatting, I might ask a couple of questions, just things to reflect on, like Reverend Wamboy had mentioned. If you're able to, please go ahead and turn on your camera so I could see your faces and we can have a conversation. Totally okay if you're not able to do that, but I think that helps the interactive piece of things. So today we're going to go on a journey together. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of how did we get here, right? Talking about the history of the stigmatization we tend to experience in our community. I'll share a couple of stories, and then we'll talk about some mindsets in our community that keep us in these stuck places. Then we're going to go to where are we today? There's this wonderful research study I found that I would love to talk about with you all that points to where we are today and some of the things that we know based off of research. And then at the end, we're going to chat about looking forward. What can we do? How can we really partner together in reducing that stigma that we tend to experience in our community? Okay, does that sound good with everyone? Okay. All right. So for the purposes of our conversation today, I wanted us to sort of define together what are we talking about when we're describing mental health? We're here to talk about destigmatizing mental health in our community. So the CDC actually describes it, defines it as being involved with our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So it's multifaceted, our mental health. It impacts how we think, how we act, how we feel, and it really helps us to determine like how do we handle stress, relate to other people, and make healthy choices. Something that I thought was important to name as well is that in this conversation of mental health, that might include things such as mental health illnesses, right? Which tend to fall into four big categories: mood disorders, anxiety disorders, personality, and psychotic disorders. So that, as we're talking about mental health in our time together today, keep in mind that that may also include mental health illnesses. The CDC mentions that it's actually really important to note that mental health is important at every stage of life. So it's not just important in one stage or another, but from childhood to adolescence to adulthood and to late adulthood. Mental health is so important, and it's important to continue to be mindful of our mental health through the different stages of life. Okay. So here's part of that interactive piece that I was talking about, right? I like to slow down and just kind of interact with you all as we chat today. But I want us right now to just take a second. I don't know where we've been today, what kind of busyness we've all been sort of in. I know for me, I had work all day and I was seeing clients. I know some of us are coming from work, but I just want us to take a second right now, maybe take a couple of deep breaths and just really use your creativity and your memory, your imagination. Think back to some of your earliest memories of mental health. Okay, and I'm going to be doing the same right here, right now with you all. What are some of your earliest memories of mental health? I'm just going to give us a few seconds here to just think about that, right? What did you hear? What do you remember hearing from people? What were you told? right? Who was there? Let's think about some of those earliest memories of mental health and what we remember of those memories. Can you give us another couple of seconds here as we just reflect on earliest memories of mental health? So for me, as I was reflecting on this in preparing for this conversation, one of the first things that came to mind was I remember hearing as a kid, like the term in Swahili mwenda wazimu, right, which translates in English to a crazy person. So there's this concept of someone struggling with mental health or having mental health illness as being crazy. They're a bit scary, off-putting, right? People to be avoided, like an outcast in the society. That's one of the first things that came to mind for me. Another thing that I was thinking through is I remember hearing a story in my family just about a distant family relative, like an uncle, distant uncle relative in the family that was amazing. Everyone, all the kids in the family loved him. He was wonderful. He was fun, playful, and yet he committed suicide. He completed suicide, right? So he got to this place in his life where he was ready to not be here anymore. And I remember as a kid hearing that story, and the biggest question for me was like, why? How can someone so just happy or sounded like he was so amazing, was so loved, was so kind? How can someone get to a place in their life, right? Someone like that, where they're ready to end their lives, right? And complete suicide. And there weren't really maybe any clear answers for me. I just remember having that question of why. I think in reflecting for me, some of my earliest memories as well of mental health is there's kind of this feeling that something's wrong. We know that there's something wrong, there's something happening. We don't really understand it. We don't know how to maybe process it as a community. And so, what I remember in some of those earlier memories is just what I saw around me is just this tendency maybe to avoid, right? Conversations about mental health, dismiss questions, or maybe any circumstances that happened were pretty hush hush, right? That's kind of the rememberings that I had. Those are some of the rememberings. I think another big piece that showed up for me is there tends to be, even in my recollection, just like a demonizing of individuals that have mental health illnesses or are struggling with their mental health, which just makes it really difficult to actually connect with them, see them as human, creates sort of a distance from us and those that might be struggling with their mental health or illnesses. All that to say, I think what's important to notice, even right now in this activity that we're doing together, as you all are remembering your earliest memories of mental health, is that our earliest memories and our community experiences, they really impact our perspectives of self, they impact our perspectives of the world around us, and they impact the ways that we view the world. I wanted to include a few quotes that maybe you all might be familiar with. I know I've heard these growing up, and again, maybe some of you have heard some of these as well. When someone that has maybe some struggles or is expressing themselves, there's a lot of emotion, maybe there's some mental health illnesses going on or just struggles, you might hear stuff like, stop being so dramatic. We don't need therapists. That's not something that we do, right? We're Kenyans, we're Africans, we don't need therapists. We don't do that. You might hear, hey, you just need to pray more. You need to believe more. You need to declare the word of God more. That's another thing that you might hear. I know I've heard that one before. Other times you might hear, there are other people going through much worse than you, right? What will other people think about you, about us, about our family? You have to set a good example for others, right? And typically that good example doesn't include having mental health illness or struggles. There might also be things that are said like focus on your education, your career, or your goals first before you can really focus on your mental health and wellness. And then this one's a good classic one, right? African men don't cry. So there are different quotes, I think, things that we might have all heard, right, in our environment growing up around mental health that just reinforce that feeling of taboo. It's not acceptable to show up this way. I can't really talk about what I'm feeling, how overwhelmed I actually am. So as I was processing this, I had a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you all, kind of in investigating, like, how do we get to this place in our community where we're just feeling so stigmatized when we come up with these conversations or feelings around mental health and illness? So my first thought was, this piece of colonization, racial and immigrant trauma that a lot of us in our African communities have gone through, whether consciously or subconsciously. There's this concept called internalized oppression, which talks about when a people or people group, a nation has been colonized, oppressed, gone through systems of slavery, things like that. There's this internalizing of that oppression that can tend to happen, where we start to really see ourselves as less than. We start to disbelief our own experiences. So maybe I'm feeling something, but I'm gaslighting myself as I'm feeling that something, right? A disbelief, an unbelief in our own experiences. There are things like acculturative stress, where we are working so hard. There's so much hard work in fitting in or acculturating to the new environments that we're a part of, especially when we've immigrated from our homelands. And then this other piece where we almost like overcompensate for those feelings, those insecurities, that internalized oppression, where we have to work extremely hard just to be accepted into the societies that we then acculturate to. A really common example of the overcompensating is, I think maybe most of you have heard this, but as a black student, as an African worker, whatever, you have to work twice as hard to get the same recognition or to be able to do the same things as someone else would, right? That's a really common one. Another thought I had was this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How many of us have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Okay. I see you, Margaret. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Right. So I'll show you all just a quick picture of what this is. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs, essentially, Maslow came up with this pyramid that talks about all of us have universal needs that we need to get met as humans. We have to start from the bottom up to be able to get to a place at the top where we can be our ideal selves. So it starts at the bottom with physiological needs like food, water, warmth, safety needs like security, right? And once we get those needs met, those are our basic needs, then and only then can we transcend into those psychological needs being met, right? The feelings of accomplishment that we all need to feel human, intimate relationships, having friend groups, feeling a part of a community. And then once we meet those needs, then we can actually get to that top of the pyramid where we feel fulfilled, we're living a meaningful life, we're doing something, purposeful, right? And so thinking about that hierarchy, historically in our countries, in our communities, we've been under-resourced, right? Even thinking about the post-colonization effects on our nations. Outside of that, just a destabilization of economies, governments, some corruption, right? We've been under-resourced. And so there's sometimes this feeling of we're just here to really focus on survival, like our basic needs. If I can put food on the table, if my kids could get through school, if we can just have our daily needs met, then that's enough, right? So we don't always maybe have the capacity to go a little bit deeper or higher up in that hierarchy and say, okay, my basic needs are met. Can I think about my psychological needs? Do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel like happy? Do I feel connected? So that was another thought I had. Another one is the idea of collectivism. African countries are typically collectivistic cultures. And so we think about in-group, out-group, we think communally versus individually. And so perhaps part of this mental health conversation is a way for us to feel a little bit like we have an understanding of who's in the in-group, who's in the out-group, how can we keep the community safe, right? Sometimes through that stigmatization, identifying find dangers to the community. Again, I don't think that collectivism is a bad thing. I think we have a lot of strength in collectivism. This is just pointing to how might this be impacting some of that stigma in our community as well. Then we have as a branch of that, an extension of that, shame in the community, right? A lot of times in collectivistic cultures, we're really concerned about other people's perspectives of us, because that means whether we are accepted and safe and a part of the community, or rejected and othered and not a part of the community. So with mental health, there's a lot of this shame. What will the community think? If they know that this is happening, how will I be perceived? How will this reflect on me, my family? That's another piece. And then two last pieces I was thinking about are misrepresentation and miseducation, right? Even just in my personal experience, I don't think I've seen a lot of positive representations in social media or media outlets in our communities around mental health, around, what it looks like to look for resources. We haven't always had that. So I think that's another big piece. Additionally, even in our school systems, I don't remember growing up, because I went to school in Kenya for a few years, 7 years or so. I don't ever remember anyone telling me anything about mental health, right? And even in university systems, things might have changed a little bit more now, but just in general, we don't have a lot of that representation that's positive. And then lastly, I was thinking about this idea of, historically, our countries in the past have tended to rely on like traditional healers, people like that, when it comes to mental health illnesses or mental health struggles, right? And what I think can tend to happen in those spaces is it plays into the myths, the fables, the stories around mental health that can be pretty spooky, right? Like you hear these stories that maybe have a scary moral about how mental illnesses happen to bad people, people who didn't do A, B, or C, right? People who have, just some sort of wrong. So that could really contribute, I think, to the fear and the stigmatization of mental health in our communities, and then people that are struggling with mental illnesses. So to sort of draw a connection here between, sorry, I'm trying to move you all so I can see what I'm looking at here. But to draw a little bit of a connection between how did we get here and where we are today, I found this really incredible research study that's done pretty recently. It was a qualitative study done to explore African immigrants' experiences in the US around mental health, illness, and help seeking. So how are we in the community here in the US seeking out those mental health services? How do we feel about mental health? And just what are our conceptions around mental health? They talked about a few important things that I thought would be helpful to kind of go over together. The first is that there's this very real finding in the study when they interviewed all these African immigrants in the US, that our traditional and cultural belief systems completely, definitely influence our conceptions of mental health, right? They also influence our notions of mental illness and our behaviors as community towards those who are mentally ill and their families. So this study showed that 100% our traditional core cultural beliefs and value systems do impact that piece. How it shows up in where we are today is that these cultural beliefs can oftentimes influence barriers to maybe even reaching out for help when we need it, because there's this internalized belief system around mental health and mental illness. It can also create this cultural stigma, which leads to fear that keeps individuals, again, from seeking that professional help when they need it. The second piece that I found from this research study is that in our communities, even migrating from our respective countries in Africa, we carry our collectivistic cultural values with us, those value systems that are embedded in us from generation to generation, and we take them far beyond the borders of Africa. And what happens is how that impacts us today is that what research shows is that collectivistic cultures actually tend to avoid, again, those mental health help opportunities, because there's this general fear of, I don't want to disclose my personal mental health information. I don't want to experience the stigma of, if I share this, what that will mean for me, for my family. And oftentimes individuals are afraid that if they do share these pieces or disclose this personal information, then there will be essentially like a never ending humiliation, embarrassment, sort of shame around their experiences that directly threatens the secure family system, right? Last big piece that I noticed from the study was that, I'm going to move you all again, give me 1 second. The other thing I noticed was that in the study, they found the participants actually reported that us as African immigrants, we have specific and unique challenges that impact who we are and our mental health that are different from other people's challenges. Some of these challenges include assimilating into a culture that's different from our own, right? Systemic racism or cultural discrimination, language dissimilarities, and also disparities in mental health services, and just a general lack of understanding of us, our culture, our unique experiences. How that impacts us today is that there's a lot of general distrust or mistrust around American systems of mental health care, right? Because if we don't feel like we'll be understood if we go and seek help, we're not going to seek for it, right? The research shows that a lot of African immigrants actually feel that the mental health systems here don't understand their cultural beliefs, their language similarities, or even just their fears or stigmas around mental health. So people just don't seek it out as much. So those are some of the ways this research study showed how did we get to where we are today, and where are we at today, right? These are some of the big reasons why we don't seek out that mental health help when we need it. Before I move on to the next one, to the next slide, we just have a few more left here. I wanted to read out some really impactful quotes from the study that just landed for me, that I heard, right? So I'm going to read out a few of these, and as I do, just slow down, really take in kind of what I'm saying, and see which ones maybe stand out to you more than others. So some of the quotes here, I'll just go ahead and read them. One of the participants in the study said, "In my native African culture, mental illness is prohibited from being addressed openly in all circumstances," right? Another participant of the study said, "African cultures believe that mental illness and individual disaster are brought on by the discord of wrongdoing, such as a lack of faith in their God, etc." Another participant in the study said, "Stigma of mental illness tops the list of stigmatized mental health and physical well-being conditions in African cultures and among African immigrants to the US, generating categories of stereotypes, fear, and rejection that are reminiscent of long-standing attitudes of assuming that individuals with mental illnesses are crazy." A few more quotes from the study here. "African immigrants are underrepresented in mental health professionals population who generally understand very little concerning cultural beliefs, values, and backgrounds of the individuals they are treating, with the traditions of healing and real meaning of mental illness in their cultural perspectives." Another participant in the study said, "In my experience with the American mental health system, African immigrants believed that the American mental health care system is not well equipped to meet the mental health needs of ethnically diverse minority immigrant population groups." And then lastly, another participant in the study said, "African immigrants faced innumerable challenging life predicaments, such as systemic racism, language barriers, employment discriminations, and disproportionate equal representation in the mental health field." As we reflect on these quotes, notice which ones stand out to you, right? For me, certain ones stood out more than others, right? These are quotes from African immigrants that work are a part of the study that are pointing to the reasons why we don't tend to seek out that help when we need it. The stigma around mental health and illness, and the things that we're afraid of, right, when we are going through mental health struggles in our communities. So I want you to take a second and think about what stands out to you about this research study, right? What things stood out to you? What did you notice come up for you as I was talking through some of those points that they found or the quotes that those participants mentioned? And I want you to kind of hold on to that, and we can process some more in our Q&A after. So as we're here in this place of where we have been, where we are, we want to look ahead, right? This is a place that we've been in. I think we're a lot better than we were maybe 10, 20 years ago. And I'm so thankful even for spaces like this that you've all created. And it's important to continue to do this work to destigmatize and to break down those barriers that keep us from being healthy, right? So one of the things is just really having honest conversations in safe spaces within our families, with our family members, with our friends and our communities, really thinking about like what is it, how can I create safety in this place, in this space that I have for someone that maybe is struggling to share something with me. I think another piece is really educating ourselves about mental health, really looking for resources and accessing them, and educating ourselves on other people's experiences, things maybe we have questions about. Because I think when we understand more, then that stigma definitely decreases as well. And then the last piece is challenging those stigmas and protecting those with mental health struggles and illnesses in our community, right? Asking yourself, I wonder why it is that I feel maybe this discomfort when this topic is brought up. Challenging conversations that feel like they're shaming individuals with mental health struggles or illnesses, right? Those are some ways that we can continue to destigmatize in our community, this conversation around mental health. So the last thing I wanted to share with you all is just these resources. I know that Reverend Wamboy had already shared even that National Suicide Hotline. So that's a really important one. If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts or struggling, that's a number that you could call here in the US. I also found this wonderful sort of group. They're called the African Communities Public Health Coalition. And they're a group that was formed in response to growing challenges of mental illnesses in the African communities. So they offer mental health services, case management services, and immigration services. So they just take care of our community holistically. There's another one called the Coalition for Immigrant Mental Health. It provides like spaces kind of like this to just talk through challenges. They offer resources on their websites and just different approaches to mental health, improving approaches to mental health in our communities, which I think is so big and so important. And then lastly, this was just a last sort of find I came across online, but it gave me hope for different communities in the different states here in the US. But there's this place in Minnesota called East African Healing Services, and they literally focus on offering mental health services to individuals in our community, psychological assessments, things like that, group, family, individual therapy, things like that just could be so helpful. So this is all to say there are resources out there. This took just a little bit of research and I found these, but we can build sort of a directory of resources if we're doing that research together. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening to my chat, just some thoughts and what I found as I was preparing for this. And yeah, I'm excited to hear from all of you, and just even as we continue this conversation, some of the questions that come up, things like that.
Boy, salute. No comment. It's just, oh my goodness. We just want to jump to, we're going to have come back for question. We're going to jump to Dr. Nancy. Go ahead, Dr. Nancy, and then we'll come back for question. I have a question for you and even to the doctor. Go ahead, Dr. Nancy.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations, Veronica. That was awesome. We took away all I wanted to talk about, except the ageism. Well, I think basically you spoke in general without identifying any ages, which is really good because that was a good overview for me and then can get in there. I'm dealing with the elderly, especially those who migrate from African countries like ourselves, Kenyans, and are faced with a lot of challenges when they arrive, let's say, to the US. In this particular time, I focused on the people from California. And because of the mixture of people from every country, California is just the hub of other communities. So I'm talking about about people who've retired from their regular jobs in Kenya, who are especially women who are retired at around age 50, 55, I'm not very sure. And then they are declared almost useless to the society because they are not giving back and they are still the caregivers and everything. So those who have children here or who had children who died of AIDS and chose to come here are met with a lot of oppositions and a lot of problems. And first of all, of course, they are facing immigration problems. So you find most of them seeking asylum. Asylum in means of, oh, we were tortured by who, FGM issues or anything that they've heard of, and especially putting their countries painting their countries as if they were in political messes, even if they are not. We've learned to look for areas where, oh, because I was this tribe, I was marginalized by this other tribe, or they tried to FGM me for the ladies, or my husband is, DV. So all those things, as they bring all those problems to a country that is very new to them, most of them don't even speak English clearly. The food is different. And remember, they're coming as minorities into another minority group of Black Africans, American Africans, and then the greater white or brown communities. So they have stages of the way they face the opposition or ageism. What is ageism? Ageism is one of the 4 ageist attitudes. There's ageism, sexism, gender, and racism. For us, for the older generation, they face ageism not only from the community, but their children as well, and other youths who make fun of them, who do not listen to them. When we come from Kenya, we are so disciplined. Your mom looks at you and you start, wow, she has said it. Don't talk. You are here to be seen and not heard. And we've kind of grown in that aspect. So you come here and you're expected to be talking, to look at sorry to say, Joel, but a white person or someone superior to you, and just to shrink. You're not supposed to be a human being. So already you're discriminated against. That is an ageist attitude. The person grows that, and in that, then because they don't want to feel inferior, they internalize those feelings. They can't talk about it because back home, when you talk about all these issues of discrimination, they think that you're a weak person, as Veronica said. You cannot see a shrink because you'd be the talk of the village. So you're on your own, battling your attitudes, battling your feelings, even good feelings, we are not able to express as Africans from Africa. So as time goes on, remember, even the food We don't eat spaghetti a lot at home. We don't eat macaroni. Maybe lately, yes, there's some people. Or mashed potato. You believe in mashed mokimos, as they call it, and other things which are beans and corn and wheat, flour, ugali. I'm sure you've tasted that with ugali sukuma because the sukuma is right outside your door. The ugali corn is just outside your garden. So we have never had to live in a situation where we pose threats or the level of acculturation is so different. And also these people who are the 60s today plus above, who are the baby boomers, never had a chance to know anything else. Most of them never really went to grade schools. They were just the elementary schools, and that was it. So they've learned what they know from their children or from working for people who are more superior to them. So that increases their attitudes of fear, of feeling unwanted, shamed, judged, and all these eventually lead to depression, suicidality, negative thoughts about themselves, and they are unable to move. So I've seen some, and I know Reverend Omboy has talked about that some time ago, whose children have actually thrown them out of the house because it's a disgrace to their friends. They don't understand, why is this my mom really? Is she so dumb? And this is especially for the parents, the female parents. For their dads, they still carry on with the patriarchal feeling that dad is always right. He's bad. He can beat up my mom. That's the way we are brought up. Yes, you'll be vandalized. Everything will happen. You're thrown out of the home, but that's okay because you're a woman. So for me, it's a research that I've been doing and continue to do. I'm a gerontology major for my BA, MSW in aging for my master's, and currently I just finished with the same thing on ageism, because of the four isms that is the most highest, most discriminated. It's even beaten the sexual problem of gender or whatever it is. Ageism is still way ahead. And that can also be explained by the fact that the elderly, especially the baby boomers, are so many, and they are the ones who are actually affecting the economies of this country and other countries with Social Security, because they are receiving Social Security, but the younger people who are to pay into Social Security are nowhere near the older people. So that doesn't help. The younger people feel like they are a threat. The older people are a threat. They are taking our money. We are feeding into Social Security. You're sitting at home, then getting the bulk of my money. So what happens in a few years? And most of the, what do you call them? Most of the, the researchers have shown that many of the baby boomers will reach their maximum time for Social Security in 2030. So in a very few years, Social Security for the younger people will be something to hope for, unless we have some other thing come up, the government brings up more. If you're not 65 by 2030, well, start earning more and start looking for ways to make money for yourself and your children. So from that angle, we've seen a lot of people pick up mental symptoms, but they are against them. They're trying to hide because they don't want to be identified as being depressed. We have, because they aren't able to acculturate eventually, there are no community, they are nowhere near the communities where our communities are involve churches. We live church, talk church, move church, and that's a part of the Kenyan, at least Kenyans or African nations who are Christians. Or if not Christians, we have Islams. They also believe in their denominations, the Catholics and all that. So when they find that they are not accepted or there's opposition, cultural backgrounds differ so much and they become a targeted population. So instead of finding space for them to talk about their feelings, the shame is so wide and broad that they internalize their feelings. They will smile, and I'll say, like, is it Dolly Parton or Skeeter Davis who said, you never know the face of a clown behind what's behind the face of a clown, because they'll smile at you, but beneath, oh, it's you're shattered. You're a shattered person. So when we do this, they just you find that they tend to do certain things. Psychologically, they are damaged. They can't find doctors because of the whole thing of except now when the free whatever has been open, the medical has been open. You can have medication, you can go somewhere and just, so there's that. But now the most important thing is that as you acculturate, you're going through a process of social, psychological, and cultural change that stems from the balancing of 2 or 3 cultures while adapting to the prevailing culture of the society. Secondly, what is ageism? Stereotyping and or discrimination against individuals or groups based on their age. Depression is a state of low mood and aversion to activity. So internalized ageism is a factor of the elderly people's self-perception and their emotional well-being. They are ageist. They feel because this age I'm useless. I'm not fit to be in a society. And there are teenagers around who make fun of the elderly. So again, increasing their level of ageist attitudes. Then we have immigrants, international movement. Who are they? They are international movement of people to a destination or country of which they are not natives and where they do not possess citizenships. So life satisfaction or state of mind of these people, the emotional well-being is really damaged. They have no fear. They can't go back because they have maybe sold their property to join to come to the country, or there are a lot of things that would make you feel ashamed if you go back. I failed in the US. I failed in the UK. Wherever I went, I'm a failure. So I have to come back and go back to digging. So all those processes lead to the elderly, especially, having a lot of depressive symptoms with a fear of sharing out. Their communities also, the fact that we live in communities and everything is community, social. You have everybody in the village knows when I was born, the other half knows when or where I went to school, others know that my mom is using, everything is so intermingled in the villages. Here we are living an individualistic society in most cases. It's just me, my family, and I, so that also impacts the person who has had 60 years of life in a social community where they knew everything, they shared everything. If anyone came to vandalize your home, everyone will know. In most cases, you just scream and everyone comes. Here we are even scared of the guns. The very fact you think the person may have a gun makes you stay at home. So this change affects the elderly in a very negative way. And what we have, so the first thing is a lot of depression in the last 60 years has been reported in cases of African immigrants. Because of the political regimes, as African leaders wrangle over leadership positions in their countries of origin, many of them have ended up dividing their countries into ethnological groups. Believe it or not, we have over 44 different ethnic groups in Kenya. And they are all fighting to have one president or one vice president or who and who. So apart from the ageist attitudes of the gender racism and all this, we have ethnic problems. So you're bringing all that garbage into a country that does not recognize you or is willing to give you a chance, but because they don't want to be thought to be naive or poor or something, you decide, I'm just me, I'm just gonna sit here and look pathetic. And that increases the many of the mental health issues. Then, of course, as we heard from Veronica very eloquently, we do not want to seek mental health. It's the stigma of mental health has really got to be addressed in this country. There aren't enough studies to show us enough of how to handle Africans or Black people from the continent of Africa who move in. And it's not only Africa, there are people from Asia, other countries who've gone through similar circumstances. But we don't have enough literature or enough resources to deal with the hundreds who've come from their home countries to seek a better life, and only to find that they cannot be heard. They're so irrelevant because of the numbers. Right now, everyone, I just want to pass and say, well, especially election time, that's when this becomes more obvious, because they don't know who's coming in next. What will they think about immigrants? Will we get papers? Will our children get this? So there has been that fear in especially aging people. And also I'd like to tell you that the word racism it's a word that was coined by Butler. I don't know if you've gone through Butler. He's one of the very great writers of the elderly psychology. And he was coined that in 2002. And by 2020, again, the figure will increase by 25%, increased by 25%. And Butler came up with the ideas of beloved and tranquil grandparents. That was his idea as an elderly person. I know he died. I have some of his books. He died about 10 years ago, but still fighting for the elderly. And but most people have disparaging images of the elderly, as I said again, as being cumbersome senior citizens, with burdens to the society, neglect of ageism, continue to stigmatize and traumatize this group, not knowing that you are headed there. And before you, they took care of themselves and you, right? So, but now that you're here and you're a bit, educated, you think, this is a woman, a hopeless woman or a hopeless man. He's so needy. And there's a clip from a New York hospital where once a woman was, an older woman was taken by the caregiver to a doctor. So when the doctor asked the woman, what is she suffering from? The caregiver started talking, saying this. And the doctor asked, the woman got frustrated as she was thinking, this person doesn't understand that I've lived a life, that I have a life, I know exactly what I'm going through. But because you can't stand the age or the time, the way I'm speaking, you choose to talk on my behalf. And that again increases ageism. So I know we are very short of time. So while aging has become to be accepted, the patterns of life changes like hearing, eyesight, it is also viewed as a very negative aspect of stereotyping of older people. Because those older people who were the foundation of this country cannot do what they used to do to stabilize a society. We tend to feel that they are not worthy of our respect, are not worthy to be heard. And we sit there just judging them with all these things that they've gone through. And tomorrow I'll be going through the same thing. So I am a proponent of please don't judge, as the Bible says. Let us take them with respect. Back in Africa, they are treated so well because they are the history. They tell us what happened before we were born, who was the chief of where, who was the king of, and you sit around the fireplace and listen to this wonderful, wonderful history of your country, most of which we got from people who didn't know how to write or talk or read, but their memories were intact enough to give us the background of the countries we now know as our homeland, or whether we are going back or not. We have something to carry around with us, knowing that the Mau Mau were in Kenya. Chief Oyaki was killed and buried upside down by the British, and we are still fighting that. I don't know if Kenyan Kikuyus know that he was buried alive upside down in Amboi, in Taita, and we are still fighting that.
Kimbwezi.
No, it was not Kibwezi. But yes, and we are still fighting that. We have lawyers fighting the British to bring back our history, to have a life, to whatever was taken from us, especially for the elderly, that those who are left, as Wayaki died in 1893, those who are left, the Dedan Kimathis and all, may have a place in life, in the history of that country. So I could talk for a whole day, but because it's a work in progress, I also didn't want to give so much. I'm supposed to be having the book published soon, but I just want to thank you for that little. Next time I'll be more, I'll also be more prepared. I had a hard time. In fact, I told Rev I was not going to be around. I wasn't feeling so well, but I thought I'd just come in. I'm thankful again to Veronica for setting up such a good beginning, and that we're able to follow through easily. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
All right. Thank you. Oh my goodness. So much information. I'm somewhere and I'm stepping out. I had a question, and this is gonna be live. I have two questions, and then once I'm done, if you're comfortable to ask questions on YouTube, it's okay. I'll give you a chance. We have 10 to 10, 15. Rev, can we do 15 minutes? Let's do 15 minutes. I'll ask my question on YouTube. And if you're comfortable, you can ask your question. Otherwise, immediately, if you take 1 minute, I'm gonna remove live from YouTube. But I want to ask this so that it can be in the YouTube. Two questions real quick. Veronica, what, being raised in Kenya and your perspective of saying Mogoroki in Kenya, now what you're doing, what do you think about that? Because I used to hear Madare. Once you take it to Madare, you're done. A mindset. Does that change your perspective with your profession?
Yeah, great question, Tony. 100%. My perspective has changed so much. I think even as a young girl, the questions, the wonderings around what's mwenda wazimu, what's mohoroki, right? There's this mysterious place that I think most of us couldn't maybe often lean into. But that really, to me, drew me to explore a little bit more of like, what's going on here? What am I missing? What are the answers that I just haven't had the opportunity to explore? So I do think that thinking about me as a young girl, hearing those terms, you know, even what you're saying, the feeling, the scary feeling of if you're sent to Mavare, like, you know, that's bad for you, right? Going from there to where I'm at today, I'm so thankful. I get to work with incredible people, couples, families, individuals. I've gotten to work with even members from the African immigrant community here in the US, and it's completely changed my perspective, right? I think I'm so humbled in this work in that we are all human. We're trying to figure life out. We are all on this journey. And of course, for us, specifically as we're focusing on African immigrants in this conversation, there are a lot of things that impact us uniquely that are different from those that impact maybe white Americans or Asian Americans, other people in this country as well. And I think what I've noticed is just there are things that impact us uniquely in our community, and they're very sort of universal across the community, right? Like we all are just trying to figure this life out, and we all need help. We all need that support. We all need someone to lean into that space and not reject us, not push us away, not say this is too much for me. We all need someone to step into that space and say, hey, come as you are, let's explore what's going on here. And so for me, that's been the most healing part of this work, is being able to hear these stories, people that you would never imagine on the outside. Like I think, someone had said earlier on the clown analogy, right? On the outside, you might not know what someone's going through, but I've gotten to see these incredible people who are putting on these faces, these lives, these performances. But when they step into that office, there's a lot going on. And I'm just realizing as humans, we have this core need to just be seen, to be held, to be understood. And when that happens, there's actually a lot of room for healing. I'm a strong believer in holistic care, where we're not stigmatizing, pathologizing people for their mental health illnesses, but actually seeing them as this is just a human that's been through a lot and they need the space to process that, a safe container where someone sees them and understands them, which is lastly one of the big reasons why I think we need more representation in the mental health community. I think we need many more African therapists, African, representations in our community in this field that can care for the people that we, in our community. Just like what was shared right before this. I love hearing your passion about the ageism, right? And like the elderly community. I'm like, this is important. We need this in our field. So yeah, lots of thoughts.
Okay, that's it.
I'm gonna ask that
I'll go live.
answers may be brief. Questions, please put them on the chat. And I'm going to request the host, Mr. Anthony, to remove us from